Amgen.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. I realise I am now the last man standing, but I can assure you I do come from the group of the converted. So I would like to share a couple of thoughts from the industry side. I'm going to try and not recapitulate some of the things that have been said already. I mean, I think we've done the themes that have come out of the meeting a great we've done these very well in a lot of detail, and we've gone over some of the main aspects of how to move forward. And so I really wanted to limit my comments to one or two specific areas. And I think to start with, coming from the innovative biopharma side of things, we fully recognise that the R&D model as it is today really is not delivering. And you may be aware of a publication from Nature last year where it showed the decline of R&D productivity over the last 40 years in terms of number of drugs per $1 billion of investment. And apart from two small blips, one with the advent of the first biotechnology drugs and one with the approval of the first anti-HIV drugs, it really is a very depressing picture. Now, I'm not saying that a harmonised regulatory environment will remediate that situation. There are more fundamental issues at play. But certainly having an environment that's more predictable, particularly when we're moving to expand geographically more into emerging markets, would certainly help that R&D model and would help to provide access to patients for some of these innovative models. And if I look at what we're trying to achieve ultimately, that surely must be the output. Regulatory harmonisation is one point, but access to patients should be the most fundamental issue. And that brings me on to something I wanted to comment on. Peter Honig touched upon it in his opening presentation, that is the role of the health technology assessments. We really have not discussed those in detail today, but if you're in Europe or Australia or in some of the bigger emerging markets now, regulatory approval is not enough, and harmonising its standards globally to deliver regulatory approvals will not facilitate access to patients in all markets. So one consideration I think we should think about seriously for the follow-up to this is to have appropriate representation from the health technology assessment bodies, because they need to be brought into this picture as well. I think the other thing that struck me from the opening presentation yesterday, I can't remember who made the remark, but they were talking about the State of the Union address that President Obama had made. And within that State of the Union, there is a clear mandate for transatlantic trade agreements, with regulatory harmonisation being high on the priority. So I think within the ICH region, this would be a great sort of area where we can get the biggest kind of bang for the buck, is to build upon some of the existing collaboration between FDA and EMA. And I'm thinking about things like the quality by design pilot, the therapeutic area clusters, joint scientific advice, a harmonisation of the regulatory assessment process, etc. So I'm actually very hopeful that will bring some quick wins in terms of harmonisation within the ICH agencies. I think moving out with the ICH countries, there's a couple of things we can do. One that struck me is really around sharing of best practices. I was in China in November speaking at the Bio conference there. And the topic of the presentation I had to present was the comparison and the similarities and the differences between the European, the US and the Chinese regulatory systems. But it became quite clear to me early on, and just the whole buzz around the place, was that China had this amazing facility to want to find a regulatory solution to the introduction of biosimilars. And where did they look? They looked to Hans-Georg and the EMA and what we'd done in Europe, because in Europe there is a legislative pathway, there's a regulatory pathway, and there's technical guidance. Now, China has some of their own regulatory issues. There are obviously legacy products, there are some IP issues, but they clearly had looked to what the EMA had done to introduce biosimilars into Europe as a pathway to to potentially look at how to introduce biosimilars into China in a thoughtful way. So kind of best practice sharing and looking at where we already have good processes in place seems to me kind of to be existential to this type of a debate. Finally, I wanted to cover one final area, and it's something I think that's important. If I look at the number of biological products now in development, I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's around 50% of products currently in development, approximately 50%. And it was touched upon yesterday in one of the breakout sessions around the harmonisation of standards for biological products and specifications. And I think it's kind of been exacerbated because over the last 2 or 3 years we've seen a number of product related issues in terms of supply chain interruption. That could be in cases of contaminated heparin, it could be due to GMP issues, to stockouts, and I think we actually face a scenario where we have a real problem in the supply chain. And if we compound that by not having harmonised standards for biological products for manufacture, that seems to me something that we just wouldn't want to do. Particularly if in the case of biotechnology drugs, in manufacturing process you may only make one lot in every 2 or every 3 years. There may only be one manufacturing run. So to have divergent standards for these types of products on a global basis just compounds some of the issues that we face today in terms of supply chain. So I hope those provide some food for thought. There are slightly different points to maybe that have been raised in the workshops or in some of the plenary sessions, but I think they are worthy of consideration in terms of how we move the harmonisation agenda forward. So I thank you very much for your attention and the invite to the meeting, and I guess we'll move over to questions now.